this series of Sangha we're looking at the path of the Bodhisattva. So we're looking at the path of the Buddhist practitioner who is seeking to grow towards enlightenment, not just for their own sake, but for the sake of all, for the sake of the world, in order to make a difference and to benefit the world. And we've seen that the most widespread universal description of the Bodhisattva path is in terms of what are called the paramitas. The paramitas. And paramita is usually translated as perfection. But the great translator from the Sanskrit, Edward Konza, he describes it as, he says it means much more, if you look at the etymology, it means much more the way to the other shore, or the way beyond. So they're the ways beyond. They're the practices that help us to go beyond our limited self. They're the practices that help us to go beyond who we think we can be. They're the practices that help us to transcend ourselves and become something more expansive and universal. So sometimes they've been called the transcendent practices. I've come across that as a translation, transcendent practices. And sometimes 6 of these paramitas are listed, and sometimes 10. Originally, I'm pretty sure there were 6, and then 4 further ones were tacked on at the end. And we're looking, in this series, we're looking at the 10 paramitas, the 10 ways beyond, drawing on the famous 8th century Indian text, the Bodhicharyavatara, written by a monk called Shantideva, who lived in the 7th to 8th century in the Christian era. So the title Bodhicharyavatara means guide to the way of wisdom, or it's sometimes translated as guide to the Bodhisattva path, and it's laid out in terms of mainly the 6 paramitas, the 6 ways beyond. So we're sort of quoting from that and using that as a bit of a basis. And last week, Mokshatara introduced us to the 3rd of these paramitas, the 3rd of these ways beyond. Kshanti, K-S-A-N-T-I, Kshanti. Translated here as forbearance, although that looks as though it's got something to do with 4 bears. Not sure that's how it's spelled, but I'll do it. Forbearance, sometimes translated as forbearance, sometimes as patience, sometimes as patient forbearance. But all of those translations could be a bit misleading. They could sound a bit too passive, actually. So tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a little bit more about this quality, this practice of Kshanti. And I'm also going to relate this to the figure of an archetypal Buddha called Akshobhya. Akshobhya, the imperturbable. Because often an image or a symbol or an embodiment can give us more of a feel. Can give us more of a feel for a quality, or more of a taste of what it's like than just a sort of description that just goes into the sort of head. It can sort of go in at a deeper level. Anyway, so I'm going to say a bit about Kshanti, and I'm going to relate that to this figure of Akshobhya, this archetypal figure of Akshobhya. So, okay, first of all, what is Kshanti? I mean, Mokshatara said a lot about this last week. I'm going to simplify it and say that essentially, Kshanti is the practice of putting up with stuff we don't like. Kshanti is the practice of putting up with stuff we don't like and can't change, okay? Putting up with the stuff we don't like but can't change without letting it get us down, without trying to find someone to blame, without moaning about it, either boring other people by moaning about it or whining inside our own heads. It's not fair. Or getting angry about it. So it's this practice of putting up with stuff we don't like with good grace, actually. Stuff we don't like but can't change. And at the same time, as far as we can, keeping a happy heart and keeping a heart of metta for other beings. And as Mokshitara also said last week, it's important to know what Shanti is not. So Shanti is not indifference, okay? If indifference means not caring. It doesn't mean not caring, or at least it doesn't mean not caring about the things that are worth caring about. Some things are worth caring about, some things are not worth caring about. Shanti does not mean we stop caring about the things that are worth caring about, but there are loads of things that aren't really worth caring about, and very often we cause ourselves a lot of suffering by caring far too much about things that really aren't worth caring about. They really don't matter all that much at all. So Shanti might involve not caring so much about things that don't matter, but it does not mean indifference to things that do matter. And as Mokshitara also said, nor is Shanti passivity, if passivity means not making an effort to change the things that can be changed and are worth changing. It doesn't mean that. If things can be changed and they're worth changing, we make an effort to change them. But many, many things are either can't be changed, simply beyond our power, beyond our sphere of influence, or they're just not worth the effort. They're just not that important. So Shanti Deva says about this, he says, why be unhappy if we can do something about it? And what's the use of being unhappy if we can't do anything about it? No-brainer. There's lots of no-brainers about Shanti, actually. Last week, Mokshitara quoted the well-known prayer used in the 12-step movement. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can change, and the wisdom to know the difference. So that's what Shanti means. It means cultivating the serenity to accept the things we cannot change without letting these things get us down, or without wallowing in blame or anger or a sense of the unfairness of it all. So, it's part of the Bodhisattva path, the practice of Shanti, but never mind being a Bodhisattva. If we just want to live a reasonably happy life, then this attitude of accepting what we can't change with good grace is the only attitude that makes any sense. So we need to learn to practice Shanti when things don't go the way we want them to do, when people don't do or say what we want them to do or say. We need to do that if we want to have any chance of just simply living happily in this world. Because, sorry to let you in on this secret, but stuff we don't like will happen. Stuff we don't like will happen over and over and over and over again. We need to get over it. The very first teaching of the Buddha, the very first teaching, the very first part of the very first teaching of the Buddha, the first noble truth is that dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, is inescapable. As long as we are not enlightened. Discomfort, even pain, is an inescapable fact. Things not being the way we want them to be is an inescapable fact. The fact that other people do what they want rather than what we want is an inescapable fact. So the universe, the inanimate universe around us, does not care about our likes and dislikes. Surely, it doesn't. The other people around us will pursue their likes and dislikes and not our likes and dislikes, and very often theirs will cut across ours. So we have a choice. We have a choice. We can either get over it when it happens, or we can spend our life fighting this fact. The fact of dukkha. We can spend fighting the world, but that is always going to be a losing battle, fighting the way the world is. And in the process, we're going to cause ourselves a whole lot of extra mental suffering in the process. So we have that choice. We have that choice. We can fight reality and lose, or we can change our attitude to it. In the Bodhicharya Avatara, Shantideva's offers us a wonderful image for this, which Bodhinaga quoted a few weeks ago. So Shantideva says, we can't cover the whole world in leather, but if we put leather on the soles of our feet, it has the same effect. So we have to take ourselves back to India at the time of Shantideva, when most people walked barefoot. And we can imagine the discomfort of walking on sharp gravel and hot sand, making our way over all the sort of different surfaces that we would find. And our walk in life is like that walk. Sometimes there is lovely, cool grass under our feet, and sometimes there is sharp gravel. And we have a choice. We can either try to change the nature of the world so that there is no more sharp gravel and no more hot sand, or we can change our attitude. We can put leather on the soles of our feet. It's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer because no matter how much we want to think that we can make the world the way we want it to be from our sort of self-centered point of view, we can't. And our resistance to this fact just causes us lots and lots of suffering. In fact, most of the suffering that we experience is mental suffering that we generate for ourselves because the world isn't the way we want it to be. So there's a sutta, a discourse of the Buddha called the Sutta of the Arrow. And in this sutta, the Buddha tells his followers that when what he calls an uninstructed, normal person is touched by a feeling of pain, what the Buddha says is he sorrows, grieves and laments, beats his breast, becomes distraught. So the Buddha says he feels two pains, one physical, one mental. He says, just as if a man were to be shot by an arrow, and then right afterwards he would shoot himself with another one, so that he would feel the pain of two arrows, physical and mental. That's what he says. So the Buddha says, as he is touched by that painful feeling, he is resistant. It's difficult to say. Resistance, obsession with regard to that painful feeling obsesses him. So this resistance, obsession with regards to things we don't like often obsesses us. So most of us most of the time, I'm afraid, are like this uninstructed normal person the Buddha describes. We spend our lives stabbing ourselves with second arrows and third arrows and fourth arrows and fifth arrows. Not just about things that have actually happened, but about things that happened in the past, things that might happen, things that we imagine happening. We generate a whole host of arrows. So all too often we have a mind that's full of anxiety or resentment or anger or whatever, all of which causes us far more suffering than the real non-mental pain that we, I'm afraid, have to put up with because we've got a body. So, Shantideva says in the Bodhicharya Avatara, when we tame our mind, we tame all threats and problems because all suffering and fear comes from the mind. Well, all fear comes from the mind. I'm not quite convinced that absolutely all suffering comes from the mind. If I go to the dentist, I think I actually suffer sometimes. But I don't know, I've had a lot of suffering by my anticipation. So maybe not quite all fear comes from the mind. Maybe not quite all suffering comes from the mind, but most of it does. So it's obvious, isn't it? It's obvious that a wise person would just not create all that extra suffering for themselves. Shanti is an aspect of wisdom. It's basic, practical wisdom. Wisdom applied to life. Why make yourself suffer when you don't have to suffer? And the opposite. So there's a sense in which, so the opposite is also the case. Shanti is an aspect of wisdom, and the opposite is also the case. There is a sense in which not to have Shanti, to allow our mental states to be constantly blown around by the little passing trivial circumstances of our lives, that is just a bit silly. That's just a bit silly. It's a bit childish. So Shanti Deva says, this is just the absurd behaviour of a child. He also says, what does he say? He says that when something we don't like happens, like somebody criticising us, our mind howls like a child whose sandcastle has been knocked down. So I have this sort of idea that to an enlightened being, we look a bit like children. I mean, when we see children, we see that they get upset about all sorts of things that we can see don't matter. They get really upset about all sorts of things that don't matter or will pass really quickly. So another child takes one of their toys, or they have to wait for something they want. They can't have it right now. Or they have to do something for a little while that they don't want to do. Or some treat they've been looking forward to is postponed, or their sandcastle gets knocked down. And this looks like catastrophe to them. This looks like it's a big thing. Although we as adults can see clearly that it doesn't matter. But it's just going to pass. It doesn't matter at all. And I have a very strong suspicion that to Shanti Deva, most people look a bit like that too. Or that to an enlightened being, I'm afraid most of us look quite a lot like that too. So, I mean, I think it's really easy to see. It's a no-brainer. It's really easy to see that we need to have a degree of Shanti to live life happily. But that is all very easy to say. And it's all very easy to understand that intellectually. But actually summoning up some of this quality of Shanti when, in the midst of the rough and tumble of life, which can be quite bruising, summoning that Shanti up is quite a different matter. So how can we do this? How can we go about it? Well, Shanti Deva gives us some clues. We can train ourselves in various ways. We can train ourselves by putting up with minor discomfort so that we become stronger. We can take on challenges so that we rise above adversity. We can do all of that in the longer term. But how can we contact our capacity for Shanti tomorrow when things get tough? Next week when things get tough? When our mind howls like a child? How can we contact a bit of our innate capacity for Shanti? Just knowing what Shanti is, just knowing the description of it, may not be much help, actually. But often it is much, much easier to really get a feel for a quality like Shanti, maybe even a little bit of a tinge of an experience of it, from an archetypal image, or from a figure that embodies and symbolises this quality. So things like symbols, colours, sounds, associations with things in the world around us like time of day, even temperature. These can give us a sort of feel for a quality. These can give us a feel for a quality that no amount of sort of intellectual exposition can do. So tonight I'm going to try to give us a bit of a feel for the quality of Shanti by describing the figure of the archetypal Buddha Akshobhya. I'll be trying to conjure up a bit of a mental image of Akshobhya in our minds, a mental idea of Akshobhya. And I'm afraid it will have to be a mental idea because I don't have an actual image. I don't have an actual image that I think is a good depiction and which I can easily show you. But what really matters is in fact our mental image. So, Akshobhya. Akshobhya is one of a set of 5 archetypal Buddhas called the Mandala of the 5 Buddhas. And these 5 Buddhas came to represent, as it were, different aspects of enlightenment. The Buddha is the overall symbol of enlightenment, combines them all, but different aspects were, as it were, separated out because that makes them more accessible in these 5 Buddhas of the mandala. And as I said, these 5 Buddhas are shown in a mandala arrangement with one Buddha in the center and one in each of the 4 cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. And Akshobhya is one of 2 really contrasting Buddha figures in that mandala, who came to represent apparently quite opposite qualities of enlightenment, but which are in fact both present and completely united in the enlightened mind. So in the west of that mandala, we have a Buddha called the Red Buddha, Amitabha, the warm Buddha, the warm red colour associated with warmth, associated with warm red light, who embodies passion and the warm emotional aspect of enlightenment, the warm emotions, metta, love. And then opposite him in the east of the mandala, we have the blue Buddha, Akshobhya, the cool Buddha, in both ways, who is mainly associated with wisdom, who embodies this cool quality of Shanti. And both of these qualities are, of course, united in the enlightened mind, but we unenlightened human beings find it much easier to connect with them as separate and apparently quite different. That quality of emotional warmth and that quality of cool, uplifted wisdom. So, okay, what about the Buddha Akshobhya? First of all, Akshobhya's name means unshakable or imperturbable. So straight away, we already see this connection with Shanti. We could describe as Shanti as unshakability or imperturbability. If we have a mind, if we embody Shanti, we have a mind that can't be shaken by the events around us. We have that quality of imperturbability. So, and then Akshobhya is portrayed as sitting on a lotus throne which is supported by elephants. Each of the Buddhas of the mandala has an animal as part of their symbolism, and the elephant is Akshobhya's animal. And what a symbol of Shanti, what a symbol of imperturbability an elephant is. You can't push an elephant around. An elephant is going where the elephant wants to go. It's not going to be pushed around. Elephants are unshakable, they're imperturbable, they're really good symbols of that. So Akshobhya represents a mind with those elephant qualities. And each of the Buddhas of the mandala is also associated with a temperature. As I've already said, Akshobhya's temperature is cool. He is too cool to get worked up about little things. Little events that go on around him. He stays serene. And each of the Buddhas of the mandala is also associated with the time of day. And Akshobhya's time of day is the dawn, the time when the air is cool and clear. When the sky is cool and clear, it's often the most peaceful time of the day, and there often seems to be a real peace about the world at dawn. So there's that quality of peace. And then in his left hand, so Akshobhya sits in the full lotus position like the Buddha here. And in his left hand, he sort of balances or holds a Vajra. What is called a Vajra, the diamond thunderbolt, of which I've got one here. So that is his symbol. The diamond thunderbolt, the Vajra, is his symbol. These are not something that we are familiar with in our culture. They don't form part of our culture at all. But this Vajra, this diamond thunderbolt, is a common symbol in Buddhism. It's a diamond thunderbolt. It combines the qualities of diamonds and a thunderbolt, a lightning strike. So first of all, lightning. What's about lightning? Lightning, a flash of lightning at night suddenly illuminates everything with this stark clarity. Thunderbolts wake us up. When a thunderbolt lands near us, it wakes us up. So, bright, clarity, wake up. These are all qualities that we can associate with the Vajra. And then diamonds. If we look into a diamond, we see this immensely clear, bright light. Diamonds are full of cold, glittering, sharp, glittering light. The light of seeing things as they really are. So Akshobhya is in many ways the Buddha of clarity and clear seeing. He embodies what's called the mirror-like wisdom, the wisdom that sees the truth of things with the clarity of an image reflected in a mirror. And diamonds are, of course, also immensely hard and sharp. Apparently diamonds will cut anything, but they can't be cut, so I'm told. So the Vajra symbolises the wisdom that illuminates the truth with the clarity of a lightning strike on a dark night, that wakes us up like a lightning strike. But it's also the wisdom that cuts through any obscuration, any fogginess or fuzziness or confusion in our thinking, to show things precisely as they are. So it will cut through the misguided stories that we tell ourselves about what is important and what to get concerned about. The stories about how things should be, how the world should be. The stories about what we like and what we don't like. The stories about our status vis-a-vis other people, our standing vis-a-vis other people. The stories about whether people approve of us or not. The stories about how wealth and possessions will make us happy and secure. The stories about how people should behave in the way that we want them to behave. So the sharp diamond wisdom cuts through all of those stories. And it is those stories, it's because we believe those stories, because we take those stories seriously, that we're constantly blown around, bent out of shape by the people around us and all sorts of unimportant passing events that don't fit in with our likes and expectations. So Akshobhya's wisdom, clarity gives Shanti. So we have this figure, this figure sitting in the cool, clear sky of dawn. And his body is made of deep blue light. Deep blue light. Blue is the colour of the sky. It's the colour, most of us would probably call it a cool colour. It's the colour of the sky. It's the colour of high altitudes. It's the colour of clear seeing, of big views, distant perspectives. And Akshobhya is made of this really deep blue light, the colour of the sky at high altitude, the colour of the stratosphere, the blue we see in pictures taken from the edge of space, where the blue of the atmosphere sort of fades off into the black of space. The blue we might see on on the sky in very high mountains. So up that high, this is a place of vast perspectives. It's a place of clear vision. Where we can see the curve of the world and the continents all spread out below us. We're high up beyond, and we can look down on all the petty goings-on in the world below us and see that most of them are just not that important. You can imagine being an astronaut up there on that sort of amazing blue and looking down on what's going on in the world. You can actually see the whole world below you, all the continents stretched out, all the seas stretched out. And then in those little cities down there, people are getting really upset about what somebody said to them, or about what their bank account's like. It's just seeing that, it's just seeing all that it's like, what would it be like? It would be like taking the emotions of the bacteria on your cheese seriously. That's what it would look like. So there's this element of just having the big picture, having a picture that puts all that in perspective. So he's up there, if you like, or we could imagine that connection with the high blue of the stratosphere. And his right hand is shown as reaching down to touch the earth. Reaching down to touch the earth. This is the gesture that we see in our Buddha Rupa here. So all of these Buddhas of the mandala, they represent aspects of the historical Buddha, in fact. And they've got gestures which represent sort of aspects of the historical Buddha. And this gesture that you really commonly see in images of the Buddha, gesture of touching the earth, refers to a mythic episode in the life of the Buddha, the life of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. So it's said that just before his enlightenment, Mara, the personification of all the forces that undermine us and hold us back, Mara appeared to the Buddha just before his enlightenment and challenged him. He said, "What right have you, you petty princeling? What right have you to sit on the diamond seat of enlightenment where only the greatest human beings can sit?" And the myth runs that the Buddha just reached down and touched the earth, calling the earth to witness. So this is a gesture of great confidence and stability. If we just forget the story and just look at the gesture, it says confidence, stability, groundedness. It is saying, here I sit, supported by the earth, connected to the earth, growing out of the earth like a mountain. Move me. Try it. Akshobhya's element is earth. And his gesture says, as I said, here I sit. I can't be pushed around. The circumstances I find myself in cannot push me around. What other people do or say cannot push my mental states around. Here I sit. And I think it might seem like a contradiction, mightn't it, that Akshobhya's element is the earth. He's touching the earth. He's got this element of groundedness. But yet at the same time, his colour is the colour of the air at high altitude, the sky at high altitude. He's connected with the clarity of vision and wide perspective that we get from being high up in the atmosphere. Well, so that sounds like a contradiction, but I think that like many so-called apparent pairs of opposites, those qualities are not opposite at all. We can see that in a good Buddha image. A good Buddha image often expresses a quality of groundedness, but also a sense of uplift, a state of upliftedness, a sense even of being above the world. When we meditate, we may feel very firmly grounded, very solid in our posture, supported by the earth, growing out of the earth. But at the same time, we might feel that our head is high up above our usual concerns in the cool air. High above the concerns that usually plague our minds. A mountain is firmly grounded in the earth. It grows out of the earth, but its peak may be high up in the high atmosphere where the sky has that deep blue colour, far above all the stuff going on down there in the lowlands. So maybe those two qualities aren't opposites at all, but different aspects of the same experience. And I think actually there's a very clear connection between having a wide perspective, a higher perspective, a higher vision that comes from being able to rise above the small concerns of everyday life, that gives us that sort of unshakability. Because as long as we don't have some sort of higher perspective, higher vision of what our life's about, as long as we're not seeing a bigger picture and keeping it in our mind, then we will be constantly blown around by the events around us. We will be the opposite of unshakable. Unless we've got some higher point of reference that's above the passing concerns, then everything that happens to us seems so important. Our little passing feelings seem so important. Our life becomes a constant melodrama, with us as the star at the centre of it all. And the little events of our lives and the way they affect our little likes and dislikes being so, so important. We'll be sad or angry or disappointed or anxious thousands and thousands and thousands of times about things that were never really that important. And maybe these things that we didn't want even benefited us, because actually we never know how things are going to turn out. And often we benefit from things that we really don't want to happen. So that doesn't stop us being constantly on this roller coaster of high and low about things that happen to us or might happen to us, below in this way and that. But if we have some of Akshobia's uplifted quality, if we've got a higher vision of what our life is about, then if it's a higher vision than our own likes and dislikes, then we will develop the stability, the character that's not easily blown around by passing events. Not even by hardship or suffering or people's criticism or approval of us. We will develop this quality of Shanti. We will develop the quality of equanimity. It means the same anima, mind, the same mind, soul, the same, having a constant mental state, if you like, that's not blown this way and that, a positive mental state. Shanti and equanimity, I think, are only really possible at a high level if we've got some sort of higher vision that's above the things that usually blow us around. A higher vision of what life's about, so that we can be immune to passing events and the likes and dislikes of people around us. So I think there's a really clear connection between Akshobia's blue colour, the colour of the high altitudes, and his touching the earth, mudra. It's because he's got that high perspective, high vision of what life is about, that he's immovable and solid and grounded, confident and stable and cannot be easily shaken. And I think his elephants also express this, don't they? His elephants bring a new dimension to it. Elephants are not only stable, elephants achieve things. Elephants are really good workers, actually. They can be trained to be really good workers. If they're going in a particular direction, they're not going to be diverted by a few obstacles. Or some humans going, oh, they're not going to be diverted. You get out of their way, they're just going to carry on. And so Akshobia's elephants are a symbol not only of stability, but also of something that Bodhinaga talked about a couple of weeks ago, which is continuity of purpose. They can't be diverted, which in a sense goes along with Shanti, not being pushed around. So we need continuity of purpose. We need continuity of purpose to keep practicing the Dharma in the face of a society that really doesn't understand what that's about. And we need continuity of purpose if we're really going to achieve anything substantial in the world. And this continuity of purpose also comes from having a higher vision. Without that, the hardships and setbacks will always knock us off course. But if we do have a higher vision of what life's about, we can keep going almost no matter what. We have endurance, we have strength. We don't care about minor setbacks. We don't care that much about hardships and suffering. Opposition, disapproval, like an elephant. Because we will get all of that if we try to achieve anything substantial. So yeah, we need to be seeing things from a position that is above our small concerns. So how can we invoke some of that Akshobhya energy? Some of that capacity for Shanti in the midst of the things that happen to us and blow us around? Well, perhaps that symbol of Akshobhya, that image of Akshobhya, if we bear it in mind, can give us a feel or a taste of what Shanti might be like. So we could imagine the cool, clear blue sky at dawn. And against that sky, we could see this figure made of deep, deep blue light, the deep blue figure of Akshobhya, made of the deep blue light of the upper atmosphere, far, far above worldly concerns. So we can imagine ourselves up there, high in the stratosphere, in the deep blue, far above the passing concerns that we usually take so very, very seriously. And we can see this deep blue figure also making the gesture of touching the earth. We could feel what that feels like, that stability, that groundedness, that strength that that gesture represents. We could imagine ourselves touching the earth, asking the earth to support us. We can imagine Akshobhya's animal, the elephant, feel the imperturbability, it's very difficult to say, imperturbability of an elephant. It's purpose that cannot be diverted. Or we could see Akshobhya's symbol, the Vajra, see clearly, we could see what matters, cut through the fog, see what matters, so that we can see that sometimes the things we worry about really don't matter. We don't need to care about them. So if when we're at leisure, maybe when we're meditating, we can get a bit of a connection with Akshobhya and a bit of a feel or a taste for what he means, feeling for Shanti, then maybe we can invoke this to help us practice Shanti at other times in the rough and tumble of life. So we could imagine ourselves, when things get tough, making the earth touching mudra, feeling so grounded and supported by the earth that we are unshakable, growing out of the earth like a mountain. We could imagine ourselves high in the deep blue of the upper atmosphere, looking down on the stuff that goes on and seeing it in perspective. We could feel ourselves to be like a mountain, both grounded and immovable, and with our head clear of such worldly concerns in the blue. So if in this way we can begin to develop this quality of Shanti, then we will be at least a little way towards practicing the Bodhisattva path. Because the Bodhisattva, it's often said of the Bodhisattva is in the world but not of the world. So acting in the world but not blown around by the world. The Bodhisattva is active in the world for the welfare of the world, caring deeply about the beings of the world, but in a sense also a bit above it all, also a bit untouched by it all. Like someone whose real home is in a higher realm, or someone who's awake in the midst of a lucid dream, acting in that dream, but not quite being touched by it. So in the words of Shantideva, our mind should serve our will and other beings, unshakable as a great mountain, knowing the world to be like a magical display, full of serene confidence, calm, eager to help others, unwearied by the conflicting desires of the spiritually immature. And never mind Shanti as the way to Buddhahood. Don't you see that it is also the way to good fortune, fame, happiness, right here and now, serenity, health, joy, and a long life, and the happiness and riches of a king? The person who practices Shanti gets all these even while they are still in samsara. So it's a good idea. It'd be nice.